few years ago, I wrote this book called Laboratories of Autocracy, where I explain the model of what's happening in these gerrymandered red states. And I think it's going to be a preview of what Donald Trump is going to try and do at the national level. What happens in these gerrymandered red states, and through other mechanisms beyond gerrymandering, is government essentially stops being about public service at all. We think of government as supposed to serve public interests, right? That's the whole purpose. But once you cut the public out, and that's what's happened, government pretty quickly turns into a mechanism to help certain private interests, certain extreme interests. And that's what it spends most of its time doing. It's no longer about public service at all in many of these states. It's about basically using government, using the power of government, be it its resources, be it its regulatory power, to serve private interests. And in a very open form of corruption, those private interests reward those in power in government to keep doing it. They take some percentage of what they're making out of this and all the gains, and they give it back to the politicians. And their hope is that that cycle just continues. And why is this so important that this is happening at the state level? Because it's a preview of exactly what's going to happen at the federal level under Donald Trump. Cut the public out as much as possible now that he's in power, so that they can use government to deliver private interests, what they want. And here's the catch. Usually what private interests want is against the good of the public. So one thing that's going to happen, just like it's happening in gerrymandered states like Ohio, public outcomes are about to fall. Be it economic, education, quality of life, public outcomes in states where the public has been cut out through gerrymandering, other mechanisms, begin to crater because government is using its time and resources helping private interests at the expense of the public. We see this in Ohio where education results are cratering. We see population leaving. We see young people leaving. We see GDP growth among the worst in the country. We have one of the worst life expectancies in the country. Why? Because government is giving all the things that are meant to lift those public outcomes away to the private who don't use them on those public outcomes. And often, let's say like for-profit charter schools actually undermine the public outcomes. So that's the model. We've seen it play out at the state level for years. It's very similar to what Orban's done in Hungary, and it's going to happen at the federal level. That's going to be nationalized. But there's several things to learn from that we have to keep in mind to stop it. I'm not just saying this to deliver bad news. One, we have to make it very clear, and there's more of an ability to do this at the national level than at the state level, that public outcomes will and are going to crater. And when they crater, we have to point it out. Donald Trump's made a lot of promises, as have Republicans, but when the economy starts to struggle, when schools get underfunded, public schools people care about get underfunded, when health care is ripped away, these things will all happen as they try and serve private interests. We need to relentlessly point it out. And the good news versus highly gerrymandered legislatures in states like Ohio is, and they'll try their best to cut the public out of the equation nationally. Of course they're going to. But there will be opportunities through statewide elections, through House elections, through Senate elections in the next couple of years to have the fact that public outcomes are falling lead to more feedback mechanism and get rid of the people doing this stuff. So look for it. Basically, government is about to be heisted to serve private interests as opposed to the public. Public outcomes are going to fall. They are going to work as hard as they can to cut the public out so they can't do anything about those falling outcomes. But the rest of us, all of us, need to highlight those outcomes falling and use that terrible outcome for everyday Americans in future elections to hold them accountable. That's the model in states. It's the model we're about to see it nationally. Do whatever you can to learn it and then learn how we fight back. Thanks.